Hello and welcome to Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name is Aiden and today we're going to be building a lap desk. Before we get started with building, let's talk about the supplies that we're going to need for this project. So to build the lap desk, we're going to need a bottle of glue, a rag for any glue cleanup, a pencil, some sandpaper to sand down our pieces, a plastic tray for any of our hardware parts, and our safety glasses. Let's make sure to put those on now. Now that we've introduced our supplies, let's go ahead and talk about the tools that we're going to need for this project. So I have my toolkit here. I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and I'm just going to be taking out my hammer. So I've got my hammer here, so let me go ahead and close up the toolkit and I can get it out of my way. All right, now that we've introduced our supplies and our tools, let's go ahead and open up our box and talk about the different materials we're going to find inside. So to open up the box, I'm going to be using the back of my hammer, and I'm going to just slide it along the gap in the tape between the two box flaps. Once you've split the tape, you can go ahead and grab the corners of the box and pry it open. All right, we've got our box open, so let's go ahead and talk about what's inside. The first thing we're going to be taking out is our packing paper, and we're going to get that out of the way, but let's make sure to check inside the paper just in case there's any small parts wrapped up in there. All right, we got all that paper out of there, so let's go ahead and talk about the hardware that we're going to be using for this project. You're going to find inside your box a small bag labeled with a green dot, and inside this bag we're going to have a few different size nails. We're not going to be using these just yet, so let's place them inside our tray for now and talk about our wood parts. The first wood parts we're going to be taking out are these dowels. There are two different size dowels here, and we're going to talk about the different size dowels when we use them in the construction. For now, let's just put them off to the side. Next, we're going to be taking out these two long rectangular pieces. They're exactly the same, and these are going to be the long sides for our lap desk. Next, we're going to take out the smaller rectangle pieces, and these again are exactly the same, and these will be our short sides. Next, we have 4 of these rectangle pieces with slanted edges on one side and rounded over edges on the other. These are going to be the legs for our lap desk, and there are 4 of them. The last thing we're going to take out is going to be the base for our lap desk. It might be a little bit hard to get it out of the box, so let's go ahead and flip the box over and we'll get it out that way. All right, now that we've got everything out of the box, let's get the box out of our way and we can get started building. So the first step for building the lap desk is going to be to set up our legs. So I'm going to go ahead and get this out of my way, and I'm going to start with my legs. But before I start building, I'm actually going to go ahead and sand down all of my wood pieces so that they're ready to build. So we should have our sandpaper right here. If you haven't already, we're going to go ahead and fold our sandpaper into a tri-fold. How we're going to do that is we're going to hold it with the soft side facing up. We're going to fold one side to the middle, and then we're going to fold the next side over that to form a little taco or burrito, however you want to call it. Once we've got our sandpaper folded up like this, we can go ahead and sand down all of our wood pieces so that we can get started building. All right, we've got all our pieces sanded, but that did create kind of a lot of dust, so let's go ahead and pick up our damp rag and wipe all our pieces clean. Once you've wiped off all your pieces, go ahead and wipe off your work surface. All right, we've got all those pieces cleaned up and sanded, so now let's go ahead and talk about our dowels so we can get those prepped as well. Now, as I mentioned before, there's 2 different types of dowels that are going to come with this project. The first set of dowels are going to be these two dowels, and these are going to be 9.5 inches long. And then we have two other dowels that are going to be 8.5 inches long. Before we get started with setting everything up, we're going to go ahead and sand our dowels, and we're going to bevel the edges of the top to give them a little bit of a slant, which will make it easier to set our dowels later on. So how we're going to do that is we're going to take our sandpaper, still with that tri-fold, we're going to hold it diagonally against the top of our dowel, and we're going to rotate the dowel slowly as we sand back and forth, just to add a little bit of a curve to that top edge and create what's called a beveled edge. We're going to do that on both sides of all of our dowels. All right, we went ahead and prepped all of our dowels, so now we can get started with building. Like I mentioned before, the first step is going to be to build the legs for our lap desk. So what we're going to need to do is find all 4 leg pieces. And if you put the leg pieces down in front of you, you'll notice that both sides are a little bit different. Both sides will have this through hole up at the top near the rounded edge, but they also have on one side a small pre-drilled hole, and on the other side there's this little inset with the pre-drilled hole inside of it. So what we want to do is set all of our leg pieces down on the desk so that the side with this inset is facing up towards the ceiling. Once you've laid your pieces down, you'll notice that each one of them has this slanted edge at the bottom, but the slanted edges are facing in different directions on different pieces. So what we want to do is find the 2 pieces that match up. So you can see that these 2 pieces both have the slants going in the same direction, so I'm going to stack those together. And these 2 pieces both have the slants going in the opposite direction, so I'll stack those together too. Once you've got them stacked, you're going to go ahead and label them so you can easily tell them apart later. So for this step, we're going to need our pencil. We're going to start with these 2 pieces here on my right, and I'm going to label these pieces 1A and 1B. 1A for the top one, and 1B for the one underneath. Next, I'm going to label these 2 pieces 2A and 2B. Now what you're going to want to do is put 1A and 2A together, and 1B and 2B together, and that will become important in just a little bit. So what we're going to do next is we're going to start with piece 1A, and we're going to move all of our other pieces off to the side. You want to make sure that the side of the leg with this inset is facing up towards the ceiling so that we can set our dowels on the correct side. We're going to go ahead and set the set the leg so that the slanted edge is facing towards us and the rounded edge is facing away from us. The first dowel we're going to set is going to be our 8.5 inch dowel. So remember, that's going to be one of our smaller dowels. We'll go ahead and measure it just to be sure, and we're going to be starting with this one. Now you're going to pick a side of the dowel, it doesn't matter which one, and you're going to place a bead of glue around that slanted or beveled edge that you created earlier. So let's go ahead and open up our glue. We're going to remove the red cap and place it into our tray so that we don't lose it. And now we can go ahead and place a little bit of glue along that top edge. Once you've got the glue on there, go ahead and spread it out evenly with your finger. And then you can wipe up your finger using your rag. Now we're going to be placing this 8.5 inch dowel into the hole closest to us, or that inset hole, the one that doesn't go all the way through. So I'm going to line this up right over the hole, and then I'm going to pick up my hammer. I'm going to be holding the dowel in place with my off hand, and I'm going to tap it into place using my dominant hand and the hammer. And it should tap right into that hole without too much trouble. Once you've got it set in there, I'm going to go ahead and wipe up that excess glue that might be spilling out the top. And then I can move on to setting my next dowel. Now this next dowel, we're not going to be placing any glue on, and you'll see why in just a second. What we're going to do instead is we're going to pick up one of our short sides and place this leg on top of the short side, because the edge of this dowel is going to need to protrude out past the edge of our leg. So we're going to line up the leg right over line up the dowel right over the leg, just like we did before. We're going to hold it in place with our offhand, and we're going to tap it down until the edge of the dowel makes contact with our work surface. You can go ahead and check, and it looks like I still need a little more. There we go, it's making contact with the work surface. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pick it up and show you how much that dowel is sticking out. Now that I've finished that step, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to attaching leg 2A to the other side of these dowels. Now you'll notice that when I attach this, both of the slanted edges of this side of my legs are oriented in the same direction. That's gonna be really important later on when we set up our lap desk so that it stands up straight. So the first thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and place some glue along this edge of my 8.5-inch dowel. Having a little bit of trouble getting my glue out, but just bear with me. Here we go. So I've set my glue all along that edge. I'm gonna go ahead and spread it out evenly, just like I did before. Wipe off my finger. And then I'm gonna start to line up leg 2A over the top of these dowels. I want to double check that both of the slanted edges of my legs are facing in the same direction. Another way to think about that is that your legs are parallel with each other. And then I'm going to line up these dowels so that they fit into these holes. I'm going to go ahead and place my short side underneath this once again. And then once I've got it all lined up, I'm going to go ahead and tap this down into place with my hammer. Take a little bit of time to line everything up, hold it in place. And I'm going to start here at the bottom and tap that on. Once I've got that tapped on, I'm going to go ahead and tap this down until the dowel is protruding out the side of the leg, just like on the other side. All right, I've got that all set up, and you can see I have a little bit of dowel on each side protruding out. So we've got legs 1A and 2A set up. Let's go ahead and set up our next set of legs. We'll put this off to the side, and we're going to grab leg 1B, just like we did with 1A. We'll pick up our 8.5-inch dowel, and we're going to go ahead and set some glue along one side of the dowel. Once we've got our glue on there, go ahead and spread it out evenly with your finger. Wipe up your finger, and then you can set the dowel into this hole closer to you. Remember, this is the hole that doesn't go all the way through. Once you've got it set in there, go ahead and wipe up that glue with your rag. Now we're going to go ahead and set our 9.5-inch dowel just like we did before. So we're going to be using our small side to give a little bit of space here. We're going to set one side of the dowel into the top hole near the rounded edge. We're going to hold everything in place and tap it down until the dowel makes contact with our work surface. All right, the dowel is making contact. You can see we have a little bit protruding out the side. So let's go ahead and attach leg 2B to the other side of our dowels. Just like we did before with legs 1A and 2A, we want to make sure that these legs are going to lie parallel and that the slanted edges are both facing in the same direction. Looks good here. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of glue around this top facing edge of our 8.5-inch dowel. All right, we've got the glue on there, so let's go ahead and spread it out evenly with our finger. Wipe up our finger, and then we're going to start to place leg 2B over the top so that it fits onto these dowels. Again, we're going to be using our small side to kind of act as a spacer as we line up these dowels. Once you've got them all lined up, we're going to start with this lower one here and tap it into place. And then we're going to start to tap in the one closer to the rounded edge. You want to tap it down till you have about equal amounts sticking out of both sides. It looks like there's a little more on this side, so I'm going to tap this side down a little bit more so that they're closer to even. Now they're looking a lot closer to even, so I can go ahead and wipe up any excess glue, and we can move on to the next step. All right, we're ready to move on to our next step. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be attaching nails into the sides of our legs to secure those bottom dowels in place. So we're going to go ahead and open up this hardware bag, and we're going to be looking for our orange dot bag. this is going to have our 1-inch panel nails, and we're going to be using these nails to secure the dowels into the legs. So let's go ahead and dump out these nails into our tray. And if you look on the side of your legs, there's a small pre-drilled hole that should be right over that smaller 8.5-inch dowel. So we're going to place one of our legs right over the top of our small piece, and we're going to place a nail into that hole. We're going to hold the nail in place with our offhand, careful not to pinch too close to the top so you don't hit your fingers, and we're going to tap that nail into place. Once we've got the nail set, we can move our fingers away, hold our piece steady, and hammer off the nail. All right, we've got the nail set in one side, so let's go ahead and flip it over and do the same thing over again. We're going to grab one of our nails, set it into that pre-drilled hole, pinch it close to the bottom so we can set our nail. Now that we've got our nail set, we can move our fingers out of the way, hold our pieces in place, and hammer off the nail. All right, we've got one set of legs finished, so now let's do the next set. We're going to pull them over here just like we did before, find that small pre-drilled hole, set the piece over your small side, and place the nail into one of the pre-drilled holes. Pinch close to the bottom to set the nail. Move your hand out of the way and go ahead and hammer off that nail. We're going to now flip it over and do the exact same thing. All right, I do see a little bit of extra glue spilling out, so I'm just going to go ahead and make sure to wipe that up before we move on to our next step. All right, we've got our legs completed, so let's go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, so the next step is going to be to attach our legs into our long frame pieces so we can begin to build our frame. If you take a look at your frame pieces, you'll notice that there's a 1/2-inch hole on either side on one side. One side does not have the hole, the other side does have the hole. So we want to make sure that that side with the 1/2-inch hole is facing up. But if you take a look at the hole, you'll notice that it's not centered, it's actually offset, which means that one side has a smaller gap between the hole and the edge of the piece, and one side has a wider gap. So we want to make sure that when we place this piece down, the side with the smaller gap is facing towards us. That's very important because we must do it this way so that we can orient our legs correctly and everything fits together. So we're double checking that the smaller side is facing towards us and that those 1/2-inch holes are facing the ceiling. We're then going to pick up one of our legs. Let's start with the A legs. Now, if you look at the bottom side of the legs, you'll notice that they are slanted. It's really important that when we set them into this piece, the longer side of that slanted edge is facing outward. So we're going to place the legs with the slanted edge facing towards us and double check that the longer side of that slanted edge is facing outwards. I'm double checking, everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and place the edge of that 9.5-inch dowel into the hole on this side, line everything up, and then I'm going to tap it into place with my hammer. Once I've got that set in there, I'm going to go ahead and work with my next set of legs. It's really important that when we set them into this piece, the longer side of that slanted edge is facing outward. So I'm just going to go ahead and line it up and tap it into place. Beautiful. Now that I've got these two legs attached to this long piece, I'm going to attach the remaining long piece to the other side. It's really important that we orient this long piece the same way we had the other one. So remember, the smaller side of the hole needs to be oriented towards us. So I'm going to be flipping it over like this to place it on. So that means that I need to orient it this way so that this smaller side is facing towards me. I'm going to go ahead and double check that I have it oriented correctly, and then I'm going to start to line it up on both sides. Once I've got it lined up, I'm going to go ahead and tap it into place with my hammer. All right, I've got that secured. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and close the legs, or recess the legs is another way to say it. And now I'm going to be attaching the small sides of the frame to the long sides. So we're going to start with just one side, or one small side piece, and we're going to be placing glue onto the short side edges of this piece on both sides. So let's go ahead and place a bead of glue on the top edge. Once you've got glue onto both sides, go ahead and spread it out evenly with your finger. Then you can go ahead and wipe up your finger. And now we're going to line up this small side piece underneath the two long side pieces so that the glued edges line up with the pre-drilled nail holes in the long side pieces. So let's go ahead and line these up so that they're perfectly flush. We're going to be starting with this top side, so don't worry about lining up that bottom one just yet. We're going to line that up perfectly, and then we're going to go back into our hardware bag, and we're going to be removing the green dot bag. Inside this green dot bag, we have our finish nails. So let's go ahead and dump out our finish nails into our tray. And we're going to place one finish nail into each of the pre-drilled holes on this side that we just lined up. Before we hammer anything, let's double check that our pieces are flush. And then we're going to hold the two pieces together with our offhand and tack in our first nail. Once we've tacked it in, let's double check that our pieces didn't move and we can make any necessary adjustments, and then we can finish off our first nail. One last check to make sure we're flush, and let's hammer off that second nail. Now that we've got that side done, we're going to flip the whole thing over and work on the other side. First thing we're going to do is line it all up flush. Once we've got it flush, we can go ahead and place our nails. Now that we've got our nails set, let's double check that we're flush before we hammer off our first nail. All right, everything's looking flush, so I'm going to hold this together with my offhand and tack in that first nail. One last check to make sure everything's flush, and then I'm going to hammer off my second nail. And then I can finish the first one. All right, I've got that side done, so now we're going to move on to the next side and do the exact same thing with our remaining small side piece. So let's go ahead and place glue onto both sides. And then we can spread that glue evenly with our finger. Once the glue is spread, go ahead and wipe off your finger and start to line up the piece underneath the long side pieces. Remember, we're just lining up the top first, so let's make sure that's nice and flush. And then we're going to go ahead and set our nails. Once we've got them set, we're double checking that we still remain flush before we hammer in our first nail. So we're going to hold our two pieces together and tack in that top nail. Once we've got it tacked in, double check that our pieces didn't move and make any necessary adjustments. And then we can hammer off our first nail. One last check to make sure we're flush and hammer off the second nail. All right, we've got that side done, so let's flip this over and start to line up the other side. Once you've got the other side flush, you can go ahead and set your nails. I'm actually going to flip this around so that it's towards my dominant hand while I'm hammering. That's just to make everything a little bit easier for myself. So I'm setting my nails into those pre-drilled holes. And it looks like my piece is starting to move a little bit. Because this side is already attached, it naturally is going to want to pull away. So we may need to push it into place and hold everything down with our offhand before we start hammering. So what I'm doing is I'm just applying pressure with my offhand so that the piece doesn't move after I've set it flush. So I'm holding everything in place, and I'm going to go ahead and tack in my first nail. Tacking in that nail should hold the piece in place, but I just want to double check that we're still flush before I hammer off my second nail. Now that I've got the second nail in, let's finish off the first one. All right, so now you can see we've got the frame of our lap desk completed. So all we're going to do now is just check for any glue that might be spilling out and wipe that up with our rag. All right, we've got the glue all wiped up, so the last step is going to be to attach our frame into our base piece here. So if you take a look at your base piece, one side is completely flat with pre-drilled holes all around the edge, and the other side has this channel running all around the edge. That's where our frame is going to fit in. So what we want to do is we want to set this piece down so that the channel is facing up towards the ceiling. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our frame. So if we were to open our legs, we want to double check that we have this oriented so that the wider edge or the longer edge of the slant is facing outward on both sides. That's how this is supposed to be oriented. So let's go ahead and flip this over, and it's going to fit into that channel just like this. Before we can set it in there, however, we're going to have to place some glue. So let's move this off to the side and go ahead and place some glue all around this channel. All right, now that we've got the glue in there, let's go ahead and spread it out evenly with our finger. Now I'm going to go ahead and wipe up my finger, and I have a little bit of glue spilling out the side of my channel, so I'm just going to wipe that up as well. All right, beautiful. Now we're going to go ahead and close the legs, and we're going to place our frame down over the top of that channel so that it lines up evenly on all sides and fits into the channel perfectly. Once you've got it all lined up, you're going to hold everything together and flip the whole thing over to make sure to hold that frame in place, because we're going to go ahead and hammer it off using these pre-drilled holes at the top here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to place one nail into each of the pre-drilled holes. Now that I've got all my nails set, I'm going to be holding this down with my offhand while I hammer in my first nail. And if one of your nails falls out while you're hammering, that's all right. Just pick it up and place it right back in there. Now that we've got the first nail in there, we're going to continue to hold this down. Make sure that your offhand is not close to where you're hammering so you don't accidentally hit your fingers. And we're just going to go around in a circle and hammer off all of our nails. All right, now that I've got all of my nails hammered off, I'm just going to run my finger over them to make sure that none of them are sticking up and that they're all flush. It does feel like a few of them are sticking up, so I'm going to hold this down again and just tap each of my nails a couple more times. All right, I've got all of my nails flush, so now I can open up the legs for my lap desk, and you can see how it's going to look. So the last step is going to be to get this painted so I can make it look really nice before I start to use it. So I'm going to go get this painted, and I'll be right back. All right, I've got my lap desk all painted. We're out here in California, so I decided to go with the cool surfer vibe, but you can paint yours however you want. But anyway, now this is all finished, so I can use it to enjoy some food in front of the TV, maybe work on my iPad or my laptop while I'm sitting down on the couch, or however you want to use it. But anyway, my name is Aiden. I appreciate you stopping by to build this with me today on Elemental Hardware Enrichment, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one.